In the winter of his 68th year, a retired engineer in Ohio sat at his kitchen table and added up everything he had built. The pension, the paid-off house, the savings he had been so careful with, and felt, for the first time in his life, that none of it had reached him. He had spent 40 years acquiring, and somewhere in the counting, he had stopped receiving. This is a film about the difference between those two words, about why one can fill a life and the other can drain it dry. But a wisdom needs a first principle, a thing it asks you to accept before anything else can stand. For this one, the cornerstone has a name: Lehitiv Lenivrav. It means that the world exists with a purpose, that creation was not an accident and not a cruelty, but was brought into being for a single reason, so that every one of us, alone and together, might receive a true and lasting fullness, not a moment of pleasure, a fullness that holds. No. The reason there is something rather than nothing is so that you could be filled, not tested for sport, not punished for being born. Filled. If even a fraction of that is true, then the disappointment you long ago made your peace with was never wisdom. It was a misreading of why you are here at all. So if the house was built for fullness, what is it that closes a person off from it? Not, as a rule, the great catastrophe. Something far quieter and far more patient. The Kabbalists spoke of a kind of fog that settles between a person and the light, not set there by God to punish, but woven by the person themselves, thread by thread, out of a single material. And that material is the story a person tells about what happened to them. Here is the hinge the whole teaching turns on, so stay close. It was never the loss itself that closed you. It was the meaning you handed to the loss. Let one life stand in for many. A man left by his wife in his 51st year. The leaving was an event. It had a date. It ended. But in the worst hour of that year, sitting alone, he passed a private sentence on himself, quiet as a whisper. I am unlovable. And that sentence did not end. He carried it into every room for the next 20 years. Women who might have loved him stood directly in front of him, unseen, because the fog he had woven would not let the light through. Do you see the cruelty of it? The leaving lasted a season. The sentence is still being served, 2 decades on. He was not, in the end, wounded by his wife. He was wounded by a sentence he wrote himself, and then obeyed every day of his life as though it were law, handed down from somewhere higher than his own frightened heart. You will have one of these. Most of us carry several. Verdicts handed down in our hardest hours by a frightened version of ourselves who was in no condition to sit as judge over anything. I always choose wrong. I had my chance and missed it. I am simply not the sort of person things work out for. And then we spend the decades that follow quietly gathering evidence for a sentence we never even noticed we had written, acting as prosecutor, judge, and jury in a trial that was rigged against us from the start, by us. What this tradition does with that wound is finer than any modern slogan. It does not ask you to paint a bright phrase over a real grief. Any grown adult feels that lie the instant it is spoken, which is exactly why the cheerful version never works on people who have lived a while. It asks something harder and far more dignified. To return to the verdict and recognize that you were its author, that it was written, not discovered, and that what one hand has written, another hand, the same hand, older now and wiser, is fully entitled to revise. Before we climb, one last piece of work from what we just uncovered, and not now, but later, when the house is quiet. Find one of your own verdicts, the single sentence about yourself you have repeated so often that it stopped sounding like an opinion and began to sound like a simple fact about the world. And put one question to it, the most radical question this entire tradition ever asked. Who wrote this? And were they fit to? Was it the whole of you, in the fullness of your judgment? Or a frightened person in the hardest hour of a hard year? Because the hand that wrote the small story is the very same hand that is able to write a larger one. Now, if the light is pouring and the house was built for fullness, why do so few ever feel it fill them? Not because the light is rationed, because there is an order to the way it arrives, a sequence of laws, and the order cannot be skipped. The first law The floor beneath all the others is one you have known in your body for a lifetime without ever being asked to take it seriously. Cause and effect, action and reaction. Nothing arrives from nowhere. Every effect in your life was, somewhere upstream, a cause. Let me set that law in a language you have lived inside for 40 years. You have watched fortunes built and fortunes lost. And you will have noticed the thing no lecture ever quite explained, that the men who chased money hardest rarely held on to it, while some who scarcely seemed to chase it all had it flow toward them their whole lives. You filed it under luck. The old teachers would have filed it under law. Watch how the same human being behaves at the two ends of that law. When a windfall lands, a $5,000 bonus, say, one man's first motion is to spend it, the impulse, the "I have earned this," and by month's end he could not tell you where it went. Another man, the same money, the same Friday, asks a different question before he touches a cent of it. How do I turn this into something that pays me again? The same $5,000. Two entirely different cups. Accept that first law, and the climb itself begins. The teachers laid it out in 4 stages, and the order is everything. First, knowledge, to understand how the thing actually works, which is the quiet work of this hour. But knowledge alone changes nothing. The world is crowded with learned people living small, careful lives. So knowledge must become application, the thing done, in the body, in the small daily choice, the candle lit before any warmth is felt. Application, kept faithfully over time, becomes transformation. And now you are no longer a person performing new actions, you have become a new kind of vessel. And only then, at the very top of the stairs, does the 4th stage arrive. Connection. Knowledge, application, transformation, connection. Write those 4 words somewhere you will see them. And here, at last, your years stop being the liability the world told you they were, and become the rarest advantage you own. Every stair on that staircase is paid for in a single currency, time, walked patiently, in the right order. The young try to leap from knowledge straight to connection in an afternoon, and they blow out the candle the moment the warmth is slow to come. You no longer do that. You have buried too many quick fixes to believe in them. That patience, pressed into you by life itself, often against your will, is precisely, exactly, the one muscle this entire climb requires. No honest account of any climb would leave out the falling, and this teaching is nothing if not honest. So let it be said plainly, while we are still calm and the ground is level. No one walks this path without falling. No one. You will reach a step you cannot lift your foot to. You will meet limitations you did not know you carried. And, this is the part the old teachers were most candid about, the part the bright modern versions leave out. You will, again and again, set traps for yourself. The obstacle on the path is so very often one your own hand laid down, in the dark, when you were not watching. But here is the liberation folded inside that hard truth. So much of what stopped you across the years was never the wall the world built around you. It was the wall you built yourself, and then forgot you were ever the mason. And the teachers added something to that I want you to hold on to when the hard days come. The trap appearing on your path is not a sign that you went wrong. It is a sign that you went far enough to meet it. Only the one who is actually climbing ever encounters the obstacles of the climb. The one still asleep at the bottom of the staircase, comfortable, untroubled, meets nothing at all, and arrives nowhere. Every founder you have ever admired keeps a graveyard of failures behind them that no one puts in the magazine profile. And not one of those falls was a detour from the road to the thing they built. The falls were the road. They were the tuition. They were the resistance that, over years, built a vessel finally large enough to hold what eventually came. There is, this wisdom insists, only one thing in the end that carries a person through the self-made trap and up off the step they could not climb. It is not willpower. Willpower is a fuel that always, eventually, runs dry. It is the pull of the light itself, the connection waiting at the summit, reaching back down the stairs toward anyone still climbing. We arrive now at the question the whole film has been quietly moving toward from its first minute. What is all of it actually for? You build the vessel. You climb the stairs. You survive the falls and learn to draw the light down. And they believed, this is the part that ought to reach right into your chest, that the world could not be repaired without you, that certain sparks in this world were shaped for your hands alone, your particular life, your particular wounds, and that if you did not lift them, no one. There is one last teaching, and it belongs right here near the end, because only now will it land the way it should. The Kabbalists spoke of an awakening from below. The great current of creation flows downward, light from the source, into the world, into you. But there is a second motion, smaller and far more fragile, that runs the other way. A single human being, down in the dark, making one small gesture upward. One act of reaching. One choice to open the cup. And that tiny stirring from below is what invites the great current down to meet it. The light is always falling. It has only ever been waiting for a sign from below that someone is finally ready to receive it. One turn remains, and it is the one I have kept for last. All this hour we have spoken of you as the vessel, the cup that is reshaped, the channel the light moves through, and every word of that is true. But there is a deeper truth folded underneath it, and the old masters held it back until a person was genuinely ready to receive it. You were never only the vessel. You are also the hand that holds the pen. This is what the title of this film meant from its very first second. The reality you create is not handed down to some passive version of you waiting at the bottom of the stairs. It begins as a choice, made in the one room that no circumstance, no past, and no verdict can ever fully enter. You have held that pen the entire time. Every sentence you ever told yourself about who you are and what you are owed, and what is still possible for a person your age. You wrote each one of them. And the verdicts that felt as heavy and permanent as iron were only ever, in the end, ink. And ink can be written over, by the very same hand that first set it down. Tonight, if that hand should choose to.